Mysticism, magic, and superstition. These are three related topics that often get intermixed in our practices. And different people like to focus on different aspects, different ones of these. Some people are more interested in the mysticism, some people are more interested in magic, and some people are more interested in superstition. Now, I believe that these are a spectrum. I believe that all three of these are on the same spectrum and are basically the same thing, but they are different ways of interacting with the same thing. There are different degrees of interacting with the same concepts and ideas. I personally believe that mysticism informs the other two. Mysticism including things like religion, spirituality, etc. Mysticism is the fundamental philosophies, beliefs, and experiences that create the technology of spirituality, namely magic, ritual, and superstition. Now, what is magic? What is superstition? Magic is the applied science of mystical technology. Magic is learning how to, well, first of all, you need a good mystical or spiritual fundamental foundation. That is your mysticism. That is your religion, your belief, your current, essentially. Magic is the technology that allows you to manipulate reality based upon that mystical worldview, that mystical experience. And most mystical traditions, not all, but many mystical traditions have a common thread, have a common truth behind them. Me personally, that common truth, that common thread is the most interesting part. That's to me the core, that's the part that I'm most interested in pursuing, the part that I'm most interested in trying to explain to people. Because I feel that when someone has a well thought out, a well understood, a well experienced, fundamental mystical belief, then everything else kind of falls into place more easily. This is why I can answer questions about magic so easily. It is not because I have years and years of experience and reams of books that I've read. It's because I've come to certain fundamental understandings about reality. And upon doing so, I apply that to everything else that I work with. This allows me to see the underlying connections between the different ideas. I often sum it up as a form of non-dualism, as monism. Zen is very close to what I understand. Luciferianism is an aspect of that fundamental truth that I believe. But that is all it is. It's just a belief. It is just a way for my biology to interact with what the spirit is. And the spirit is much more and much more indefinable than any words that I could use. Anything that I give you in my book or in my lectures or in my streams is just a shadow. It's the demiurge of reality. The true reality is far more simple and far more basic and far more unexplainable. It is like trying to describe complete emptiness. It's like trying to describe the color blue. It is experiential. It is something that is very fundamental. Now, magic comes from an understanding of this fundamental nature of reality. And if you're a Christian, then your idea of magic will involve invoking the Spirit of God in some way. God or one of the angels, the Adonai, the various elements of that, or the origin of that fundamental current. If you're working in black magic in the Judeo-Christian current, that means working with demons and devils. If you are a Roman, your fundamental way of doing magic requires utilizing gods and various principles related to that stuff. and so on. And when I say Roman, I obviously mean someone from Roman times. So your magic is the technology that is based on this mystical belief, this fundamental gnosis, this fundamental current of belief that informs everything else that you do. And this is why you can have very, very different magical practices that all fundamentally work. This is why you can interchange things to some degree and not to others. For example, being someone with the beliefs that I have, I find it more difficult to function in Greco-Roman currents. I don't function as easily in that. However, there's elements of that do inform what I do, because I do see a continuation from the ancient gods to the modern time through some of the correspondences between the Roman entities, the Roman gods, and gods from prior eras. And of course, the planetary alignments, the planetary spheres, they of course seem to be in every culture and every time fundamental. And so therefore planetary associations and correspondences have value to me, though to a lesser extent. It's more along the lines of, I understand Saturnian energy, Venus energy, that kind of thing, but I don't necessarily care about where they are in the sky, although I do find that when they are high in the sky they have more of an influence, and so that makes them more useful. But of course some people go take it the next step and they use astrology as well, and they'll add more to it. And I'm not in any way saying those things don't work. I'm just saying that, or that they do work. I'm saying that my personal experiences are shaped by my understanding of reality, and I use those things which mesh best with my fundamental beliefs of reality. My fundamental belief of reality revolves around the idea that everything you experience is a kind of illusion and a delusion. And I've said this so many times that it's getting kind of, repetitive for me to bring it up over and over again. But this is also a good thing. That means that I can shift from one current of fundamental belief to another in my magical practice. That means that today I might be working in one current, say the Goetic current, and tomorrow I might be able to do something in a Taoist current or any current, a Lovecraftian current. The only requirement is that that current appeal to me, that it speaks to me, that it allows me to generate energy, belief, and emotional content. That's very important. I very much enjoy the aesthetics of magic as well, but these are, again, the technologies, the fundamental technologies that make what we do work. So mysticism and spirituality are the fundamental theories, principles, and philosophies. Magic is the technology. Magic is the technology that makes it work. So what is superstition? Well, superstition is what the people do who do not understand the fundamentals, that don't have a fundamental worldview that they feel any connection to, or if they do, they don't understand the connection between what they're doing and the mystical, or if they do, it is not done with the same mentality. A superstition is a thing that takes power away from the person doing the ritual or the act and gives it to the act instead. And that might be the best way to define a superstition. A superstition is something that people believe is important, and it is that belief that it is important that makes it important, but they don't know that. So, for example, throwing salt over your shoulder when you sneeze or something, or when whatever your different superstition is, and we can have something as basic as that, all the way up to you must use real beeswax for your candles, or you must face this direction to invoke this spirit, or you must use that specific sigil or it won't work, or you have to speak to the Goetic demons as if you are invoking Yahweh and all this other stuff. These are all superstitious acts. They are not themselves powerful. They are not in themselves in any way important, except your belief empowers them. And the superstitious person, someone who uses superstition without that knowledge, is at the mercy of the current, is at the mercy of what's going on. And those are the ones who are usually inept, or they have problems in magic. Those are the ones who will, they're the ones who don't actually do magic, they just perform magic. Those are the ones who can go through a ritual and spiritually dead, because they believe that what they're saying, how they move, and the words, saying the words just right is more important than the belief, the energy, and the feeling that goes into it. When in reality, it's all pretty equally important, just for different reasons. You know, I'm not sitting here telling you that it's not important to say things the right way necessarily. In some traditions, I think it is. And I think for some people, it's exceptionally important. I think for others, not so much. And why is that? Why is that time and time again the case? Why is it possible for all of us to have different, completely different sometimes? You know, I can be sitting across from someone who does things completely differently, and they're having just as remarkable and magical experience as me. I can go to a New Age, you know, shop and speak to the owner, and they've got a completely different view of spirituality and mysticism, and it works for them. I would, of course, say that it doesn't work for everybody. I would, of course, say that some of us, it works better than others. I would say that some of us are more equal than others when it comes to our experiences of magic. And that sounds very smug and arrogant, but it's not. Although I may have said it in that way, the truth of the matter is not everyone can do magic to the same level. Everyone does magic all the time, but to do magic consciously, to take control over it, to actively engage spirits, to actively manipulate energy and feel it, and to see spirits and to see results when you do them, that requires something that is fundamentally not learned. That requires something that is fundamentally just part of your nature. As this lifetime that you're living, it is a gift of yours. Just like some people, like everyone, barring people with a biological problem like missing a voice box, everyone can sing. Not everyone can sing well. Everyone does magic. Not everyone does it intentionally. Not everyone can do it with intent. Not everyone is connected to it. Not everyone is able to intentionally invoke spirits and get results. And some of it can be learned. You can absolutely learn to do things that you don't do. I believe very firmly that everyone can improve. And that in a way there are no limits, except not everyone is going to achieve them. In other words, not everyone on this planet who's given the gifts and the knowledge can achieve the same things as someone maybe who hasn't even practiced. The amount of actual practice that I've done compared to many of the people who watch my videos and gain benefit from them, I've done far less. Even in my 25, 26, 27, whatever, how many years it's been since I was 13 or 14 and I first intentionally began invoking spirits. Even since then, by comparison, there are people who have done much more, who have memorized reams of books, who have experimented with every form of magic there is, to the point where they feel like they've exhausted everything and they're bored, and they're looking for other outlets. And me, I'm just living the life, pardon me for the microphone, I'm just living my life in a magical way, and I'm enjoying the experience of it. And so, I think this is what happens when you have people who get caught up in the superstition of magic, versus the technology of magic, versus the mystical truth of magic. And I think for you to be an effective sorcerer, magician, whatever you want to call yourself, you need to integrate all three of those. I'm not saying you should do one to the exclusion of another. You need to integrate all three. In fact, my weakness has been not studying enough, and I've been proving that constantly now. I don't know if I'll ever catch up. I don't think my intention is to catch up. My intention is just to keep expanding and just keep experiencing. That's really what it boils down to. But you can't really exclude one to the, because it becomes a detriment to the other. You do need to embrace some superstitious ideas, but you need to know that they are just that. You need to be able to put them down. And I'll give you some examples of things that I believe are just superstition, but I do them anyway. For example, material offerings to a spirit. I don't believe that spirits necessarily really want a piece of bread or a shot of whiskey, okay? I'm not saying they don't want it, but I'm saying I don't really think that they don't care about the material, because they're a spirit. There's nothing stopping them from going to a liquor store right now and downing the whole place, okay? So what is it about it? Why is it important? The superstition is thinking it's the whiskey or the wine or whatever it is. The superstition is thinking it's the specific material. What the actual offering is, what the actual gift is the energy and intention of giving something. It is the idea that you're sacrificing something of value. It is that you're putting energy into it by trying to find, you're putting spiritual energy into it. You're charging it, and I'm just getting chills right now. Spirits are like, yes, tell them. The part that makes it valuable to them is not the stuff. It's the value you assign to it. Because in the spiritual realm, those things have weight. Those things have pressure and value. And I'm not saying, again, that there is zero interest in the material. I'm saying that it's not the point. I'm saying that you could probably give them anything, so long as it is something that is from the heart, something that is of interest and is made with sincere offering. Kind of like when a little kid draws a picture of you and you put it on the refrigerator. It's the greatest picture of you you've ever seen because it came from the heart and you love it. It's the same kind of idea in a lot of ways. I got a train going by, pardon me. There's always got to be something here. I can't wait to move. I got to move out of here sooner or later. I got to start doing rituals for that soon. So these things that we're offering, that's why in my video about offerings, I make such a point to point out that ingesting the offering yourself and invoking the spirit when you do it, they really like that. They love that. If you can do, they will. It's like when you rub a dog on the belly and it's just going to follow you around. They love that. I don't mean to put them in the same perspective as a dog, but they love that. Doing service for them, because there's things that you have to understand, they need agents in the material world. So doing things for them has value to them. But just giving them a stick of incense and saying, here you go, buddy, this is for you. I'm not saying I've never done it that way. I'm just saying that's important. And another superstition I have, but this one actually, to me, my belief is a little bit more sincere, is in the past, I had an offering cup. And it was an offering glass. And I had dedicated this glass for offerings. And then on a whim one night, I was feeling kind of salty and saucy, and I used that cup to drink out of, because I was thirsty. I wanted to have a drink of booze, and I don't drink often. I was like, you know what? I'm doing this. Forgive me. I knew I was doing wrong. And I drank out of it. And I'm thinking to myself, that was dumb. You probably shouldn't have done that. The very next day, in a very, we'll say, synchronistic way, in a very surprising way, in a very meaningful way, the glass fell, the cup, the goblet fell and broke. The very next day. I hadn't touched it since. I used it for that one drink. And I do believe that the spirits were offended by that. I do believe that, and it wasn't a serious offense. It was just more along the lines of, listen, you dedicated this cup to us, and you used it for yourself. You basically took the gift back. And they weren't mad so much as they were scolding me. Since that day, I'll never do that again. And a lot of you will be shaking your head like, yeah, that's obvious, but not everybody knows these things right off the bat. There's a lot of beginners who would make that mistake, and at the time I was a beginner. Especially in terms of using that kind of a thing for offering. Because in the past I wouldn't have used it. I would have done it some other way. I would have just poured it out on the ground or something like that. So that's superstition, but there can actually be, remember, superstition is, one thing I didn't mention before, is mysticism informs magic, informs superstition. So mysticism filters into magic, that creates the technology, and then the ignorant, or the people who don't know what they're doing, or the people with simplistic ideas, materialistic ideas, will take the technology of magic and then only see the superstitious aspect of it. So those are examples of superstition. What's some others that I do? Specific incenses. Technically, that is more of a modern thing. Especially when we start associating things with planets' energy and different gods from different cultures. These are different ways people have done things throughout history, and they're not always the same. And yet they still work for everybody. They can even conflict, and they still work. So when people will sit there and they'll say, well, you must have, we'll say, lavender and patchouli for Lucifer. I'm not sure where that started. I could probably do more research and tell you. But lavender and patchouli are, in some traditions, what Lucifer likes, as well as some other things. Well, I've used sage. I've used, Palo Santo. I've used dragon's blood. I've used all different kinds of incenses. And it never seems to offend any specific spirit when I don't use the one that someone else says is the right one for them. However, I find that when I do try to match the incenses, I enjoy it more. I believe it more. It gives me a feeling of that I'm doing something that is dedicated. And that, again, makes it a more suitable offering because it's not the incense, it's the belief behind it. Furthermore, different incenses, because they're linked to smell, and smell is one of the most spiritual senses in a lot of ways, because when you smell something, it can bring up a memory, it can bring up a feeling just from a smell, you know. Like some of you, you know, may not have this experience, but like you smell a certain perfume, you think of your wife or your mother or something, and it's instant, and you can sometimes feel like a connection immediately. You know, you smell a certain flower and you think of a day in your childhood where you know, maybe we're playing in a field and that smell was there, something like that. Well, that's a very spiritual sense. It's the repressed sense, which means it's a very internal sense. It's a very spiritual sense, the sense of smell. So there can be something to it. It's just that it's not necessarily what you think it is, okay? Now, magic, examples of magic, things that are magical rather than just superstitious, is when you know how energy works, when you know that the sense of smell is linked to the spirit world because it's internal, when you know that spirits enjoy offerings of a certain type, not because of the substance, but because of the intention of the substance, because of the meaning it has. That is the magic. When you understand that, that's the technology, because now you've learned how to manipulate the currents of energy in the working. So someone who's superstitious will do a spell by the book, by the numbers, and they will just lay it all out on their altar, and they will do it this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, and off it goes. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. A true magician or sorcerer, instead of just seeing those as necessary ingredients, sees them as influences, sees them as energy batteries, energy systems, and that energy ultimately is actually coming from the sorcerer or from the source itself, which is the all, okay? And so what we're doing, instead of using material items that have magical properties, we are using material items that invoke or evoke or channel or allow us to direct the energy of the universe through them as a conduit to inspire the energy of the spirit world to act. That's magical level thinking. Mystical level thinking is when you understand that all of this is an illusion and that whatever you believe it is can become reality if you believe it correctly. Not just, I hate when people say believe it strongly enough. We believe all kinds of things with equal strength, okay, and they don't work. You know what I mean? Like, you can fully believe that you can fly and step off a roof and fall to your death. It's not just belief. It has to be applied belief. There has to be energy in it. There has to be action associated with it. So mysticism informs the magic, which informs the superstition. And you, as a sorcerer, as a magician, need to integrate all three of those elements, and you need to do so with intent. And that intent, of course, needs to be fundamentally true. It needs to be your truest intent. And true intent is often abstract. In fact, it's always abstract. Your true intent is never, I want a Mercedes-Benz. That's not your true intent. Your true intent is, I need a luxurious means of conveyance. I need a conveyance. I need to be liberated from the idea of not having a car. It's more abstract. It's always more abstract. And a true sorcerer is in tune with that abstraction. And they work for that abstraction. So when someone asks me for a spell to do X, Y, and Z, if they have a superstitious mind, they think that I can do a spell to grant them exactly, word for word, what they're asking for. And sometimes I can. But the truth of the matter is, what I'm able to do, what you're able to do, what we're all able to do, the true nitty-gritty, is it's not just what you ask for, and words do have power, but that's another story for another time, is that true intent, that true abstraction, that is what the sorcerer will make happen for you or for themselves. It's the superstition that makes people think that you can do things a little bit more specific, like if I say the right word, I can make a clap of thunder happen or something. That's a superstition. Magic is understanding that maybe I can't make a clap of thunder happen, but maybe if I do the spell just right, I can make a synchronistic moment happen where everyone thinks I have the power to make nature do what I want. That's a little bit more doable, okay? Not just because it's a broader brush, but because it's more of an abstract idea, okay? So keep this in mind, these three things, while you're practicing your magic, especially if you're reading my book. I don't put this in my book. Maybe I'll put it in a new edition. I'll explain this a little bit more in depth like I did in this video. But this is a very fundamental understanding of magic in general. And I think that there's a lot of you out there who will benefit from hearing that. Show me your support by making sure to like and comment on this video. Subscribe and hit the bell for updates. And then, if you wish, share this video responsibly. If you want to support me further, or want to know more about my practice, or learn to master your own, consider purchasing my high-quality book, Become the Maelstrom. The link is in the description. If you need my help, or want to book my professional services, you can contact me directly on Facebook, or go to FromTheAshesPublishing.com and look for my list of services under Magical Services. If you do not see a specific service or ritual that addresses your concern, contact me and I can tailor-make a custom ritual working just for you. The link for all this are in the description. Thank you, and mind the shadows.